What up? Welcome back to the pod. You are now with us for just checking in. Of course, it's everybody's favorite uncle, Uncle Don Don, joined by my good brother, Qualls.
Just to qualify, per usual, as usual.
Absolutely, absolutely. So as always, we in conversation with each other. So I just want to start off and just check in with you. How you doing?
I am doing all right. It has been a week. Well, as you know, like we traveled earlier this week. So between traveling middle of the week, which I do not advise, and then going right back into work the next day. I mean, typical, it's life, but I feel like just catching up from that or feeling like my body catching up from it in particular. But it was funny. I was talking to my best friend yesterday, and I had got to a point where I was kind of expressing a season I felt like I've been in for a while, but for whatever reason, this week just kind of really put it in perspective that like I can no longer prolong this shift that Big G, the man upstairs, has essentially laid out. I feel like he told me a while ago, like, hey, this shift is about to happen. About to put you through this shift. Be ready. And then he was like, all right, so we in this shift and you clearly don't want to move things around. So we're gonna slowly start pulling things away. So we gonna remove this person. We're gonna remove this thing. Okay, you're gonna have to do a little bit more. Okay, you're gonna have to do a little bit in this season. So that has been overwhelming, but not in like a I wouldn't say it's been in a depressive type of way, but just overwhelming because I feel like I understand the magnitude of the shift. So I think as I start to understand that and even kind of understand my relationship with God a little bit more, I think that I've just felt myself in this space of yes, transition, but I think just really acceptance, kind of being at peace with where things are in life for me right now and where I want to go, where I'm trying to go and where it seems like my path is leading me. So that's kind of been the type of week it's been. I guess very introspective, but I would say it's been positive introspection for the most part.
So that shift all came to a head this week, or are you just saying this is the season you've been in?
I won't say it came to a head this week. I think just the season. I think there have been moments where it like peaks in a way where I just am like reminded, like, yeah, you definitely in this season. Like, ain't no question about it. But I wouldn't say it came to a
Thug it
head
out.
this week.
Yeah, you definitely got to thug it out sometimes. But yeah, I feel like that's the season that a lot of people are in right now. I think we are realizing that change or transition is on the horizon. So I'm feeling it too, more so than the last few months than specifically this past week. But
Yeah. Yeah, I was definitely 2024. Definitely 2024. It's been the last 3 months have kind of been like, right, we are clearly going to turn this corner. There's no can't turn around and go back toward that street. We got to go on this, got to go on this next street.
no backward steps, right?
If you know, you know. If
Yeah,
you know.
no.
But yeah, yeah. Man, so before we recorded, you actually gave me the light bulb for this first question. But uh whether you're in different seasons, whether you're going through different phases in life, we are tested a lot. We are very much tested. Do what would you say is your biggest or has been your biggest test in life up to this point?
Ooh, my biggest test. I feel like I just passed. It wasn't with flying colors; they was dull as hell. But I did make it through. But I think these last 2 years of my life have been the biggest test that I have ever been presented with.
Mm.
Uh, no study guide, no tutor. Like do these equations and go.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, I mean, in short, like my life was just uprooted 3 years ago, August of 21.
Mhm.
I walked away from a job. I walked away from an apartment in the city, my life that I had built up until that point, and press restart. And I was running away from something, not running towards something, which I think would have completely changed my trajectory. So in doing that, I didn't know what was on the other side. I just had to anime bullock this and run across that highway and get away. I didn't know what was on the other side. And that came with a lot of tests. That came with a lot of turmoil. That came with a lot of hell. So I passed my test very dull colors, but that's been my last big test.
Anime Bullock is crazy to just throw in there like that.
You got to know.
Because all you can think about is the scene. Just all I'm thinking about is the scene.
It's the run up where she like stops with the car and then backtracks to do that, and then the white heels and that. Oh man.
No, but it's interesting that you mentioned running away from something versus running to something. I do think that's a huge difference. That I feel like people understand but don't necessarily always acknowledge. What do you feel like is maybe not the reason, but what do you feel like is a big difference why people seem to act more so on running away from something than running to something? It's almost like people are quicker to run away than they would be to run towards something that may be beneficial. Like it's almost like you'd rather run away without a destination
Uh-huh.
instead of like running toward a destination that has kind of already been laid out as a good landing spot for you. Do you have any thoughts on why in general people kind of tend to lean toward doing one versus the other?
Yeah, I mean, you said it exactly. It changes the pace and it changes the speed in which you do that. If
Mm,
I'm running away from something, I'm getting out of it. I'm bat out of hell. I'm trying to get a case of the zoomies and go, right? I don't know where I'm going, but I'm trying to go as fast as possible. If I'm running towards something, you don't always like rush your goals. You don't always rush success, right? It's a certain pace that it'll take. But I think at the end of the day, a lot of people, myself included, at some point lack intentionality. And I think intentionality is where you are going towards something. So if it's just a girl, my man is, I got to get away from him. I'm running away from him. If, oh man, I hate this job, bro. Like these people are treating me like terrible. I got to get out of here. You're running away from the job. But I still haven't put in language to say I'm going towards a better relationship. I'm going towards a better, work environment. That's a little more intentional. Some people are, right?
mm,
But generally speaking, I think it's easier to run away from something because we lack the time that it takes to be a little intentional.
that's probably the point. I think the intentionality point is very key, and it's I guess I never thought about how many people don't act with intentionality and how difficult it is. I think intentionality seems difficult to me because it's almost I know you don't really subscribe to this word, but I think intentionality aligns very much with discipline because within being intentional, I feel like there's a discipline that comes with doing the things that you know are going to get you a particular place, even if that thing like scares you, or even if you aren't 100% certain of how it'll turn out. Not saying they mean the same thing, but I think they're aligned closely enough to where because a lot of people struggle with discipline in general, and not you, of course, because you just don't subscribe. But for those that legitimately struggle with discipline, I think that intentionality is like a next level of it that becomes harder because how can you be intentional about something that you can't really commit to for real?
Yeah, I mean, no, that's a valid point, and I really could sprinkle some discipline in my life. But for those out there watching that are with me that lack discipline, I think I'm a very intentional person, but my intentionality is supported by understanding and not discipline. Like I understand that if I do this, if I go on this path, if I take this time, if I whatever it is, then fill in the blank will happen.
Mm,
Um, so I talked about being a late bloomer before. Like I know the time piece of it. I'm not gonna rush that because I ran away from something, right? But I don't want to be Goldilocks and be like, "Ooh, I'm gonna run to this bed. Ooh, I'm gonna try this porch." She ain't like none of that stuff, right? If she had just waited, well, if she waited, she probably wouldn't have been in nobody else's house. Let that be known. But if she would have waited, maybe she could have just picked the right one off rip, instead of having to do all of those things. So my intentionality is like I understand the process or a process versus like I need to do boom, 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 boom because that's discipline, and I don't do that very well.
Slight random side quest question before we move to the next actual question on the docket. Between patience and understanding, which one is more vital? I know that might be really subjective, but which
Okay.
one is more vital or more necessary? Or do you feel like they're kind of one and the same and they really do just go hand in hand?
I mean, they can't go hand in hand. I don't. They can't go hand in hand. If you are asking me, like if I'm me myself personally, I hate when people say that.
A
Um,
whole me?
a whole. Yeah, I would say understanding, just because like I'm a perspective person. Like
Mm,
even if you do some stuff that I don't agree with or it doesn't make sense to me, I have to see how it made sense to you for me to be able to move forward in anything. So like I'm gonna pick understanding, but that's wildly subjective.
yeah. Understood. I think I've been challenged to exercise patience more. So I might lean toward that because of my personal experience. But I mean, of course, again, it is wildly subjective. So I don't there's not a right or wrong answer. But I think that because both are heavily needed in general when you're talking about whether it be within your personal life or within relationships, I just think it's interesting which one people kind of lean more toward or what the relationship between the two are for different people because there has to be some relationship, but
Sure.
nonetheless. You mentioned earlier just your biggest test being like the last 2 years and you really uprooting yourself from where you were then and being where you are now. With that being said, I think we could both agree that seen we've seen a decent amount of versions of each other. We've seen each other go through some different phases in life. So my exact question for you is how many versions of me do you feel like you've seen?
That's a really good question because I don't even know how to quantify that.
It's hard, yeah, because like how do you quantify a version of a person? Because you could say phase, you could say era, like those are the first words to help me kind of break it down. But how would you quantify that?
I mean, if I started off by era, we could go by hair because you started off with the box cut, and now you got the like urban Keith Lee going on right now. It's
You're like the third person to say this. I
go
don't
ahead,
feel like I look like this man.
hit me with the one time. Yeah, no, it's very much given that. But no, if I thought about how many versions of you I have seen in the 8, 9 years we've known each other,
Yeah,
I would probably say at least four. So if you go in waves of two, um, it was the undergrad you, then it was alpha undergrad you. You had this, oh, I guess maybe five. You had this kind of, I'm kind of grown, but I'm not really grown. I'm supposed to be doing grown people things, but I'm still kicking it, like, Then
yeah,
you got grad school you, and I say now you was kind of split in half because you got the shedding of all of that as you get ready to become who you are. But then you also have like this very solid, planted, kind of confident, I know who I am, I'm exploring the world type personality. So what I say, like five.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, but you had some nice ebbs and flows along the way.
Absolutely. It's been a journey. It's been a
Yeah.
journey. Who would have thunk? Who would have thought we'd be here?
The name of the game is to think, but I can tell you I ain't played that one.
I feel like I've seen probably like at least three. I feel like it's at least three versions
Of
of you.
me.
Yeah. It might be four, but I say three for sure. Because when I first met you, I feel like, but also I feel like for me, the versions of you are based on my perspective at the time. So being an undergrad, the first version felt very like mentorish because that was before we knew each other, like more personally. So the
Mm.
first was like, oh, this is like, one of my mentors on campus, like, a black male, educator on campus that actually cares about, the black students on campus. So this is cool. Got one of my like, my family members home away from home type of deal. Then there was, and I don't know if you see this as a different version, but I think that how we started to connect and become closer as I got into grad school, which to me is kind of synonymous also with the COVID time where we just started spending a lot of time together. I think for me, that is a specific version because that's like, okay, this is not just Donald the mentor. This is not just Donald the pro fight. This is not just, Donald over MBMI. This is Donald, my brother. Like this is Donald, my confidant, even like to a degree. Like for me, that's a different version, but I'm also trying to look at it from where you were in life too. And I think that I don't know if you ever felt like you were like comfortable in Como at a particular time or like too comfortable, like to leave, but you just felt very like I think solidified in that time. I think right in that for me, like that grad school time, so like 19, 20-ish. I feel like for you that might have been maybe not the peak, but you were very solidified in like MBMI was your program now. It looked like your program versus how it was Jonathan's program before. So
I was
like,
in my bag in that season. I'm not
yeah,
gonna.
yeah. So that was a time where it's like, okay, like from a professional standpoint, like, nah, you like, yes, I know you as a mentor from being undergrad, but after being removed from undergrad, it's like, oh, like from a professional standpoint, no, like you just really in your bag with like what you want to do within higher ed. But I do remember the version of you that got burned out. The version of you that was torn and distraught and overwhelmed because it was no longer the space that it had been for you. So there was that version, which was it was really hard for me to see that version of you because you know how sometimes like you just feel like not like just because they older, but like people who you look up to, people you admire, it's kind of like you never expect to see them struggle with something. So when you do, you kind of for me it was like how do I help in this situation? Like so I'm looking for advice myself. How I'm supposed to help him in his time of need, but that I think that also helped me grow, as a brother as well. And then of course that led to the uprooting process. But then I think, you know, throughout the trials and tribulations of the last 2 years, I mean, I look at you now, and this version is like, yeah, like it's weird to kind of look at it like, you figured it out, but in your own way, like what you're figuring out may not be like my figuring out type of deal, but it's still something that you had to go through, something an obstacle, if you would, that you had to overcome to be where you are now. So I think that might end up being four. But yeah, I'd say four virgins. I think I've seen of you or that I've known you through.
It's interesting. We had to go back and count because that might have been four because I ended up having five. But it's interesting that you say that because you even mentioned that you didn't see like I won't say older people, but like older people than you
Yeah.
struggle, right? You
Yes.
you see them as an adult, and it's like once you get that level of adulthood, you get this like check mark that lasts you a lifetime, and that's not the case. So you even mentioned that before, but I think being you seeing me that way, excuse me, also allowed me to see one of the phases for you to go through because exactly what you just described is the role I assume in life all the time. I'm a
Mm.
lead, I'm a, do all of these other things. Like I have it in order. I'll try to teach and mentor and coach and do all of these things, but you do that from a place of experience. Well, when you go through the test that I was, going through being knee deep in depression and being swallowed up in debt, like out here really struggling, and I present to the world as together. Like, so here you come as super brother to the rescue, like, hey man, what's going on? Like I'm just pull up, and I'm like, why is this? young kid like checking on me. Like I'm supposed to have it together for you. But that allowed me to see you transition into one of your phases as you became more, like I said, understanding and more confident in you because you were able to be planted and help somebody else. It didn't matter like age, it didn't matter situation. It was just like, this is my brother. I'm connected to him. I can figure out how to support. I don't know what he's going through. I can't even believe he's going through it. But like, yeah. So now you are. That's why I call you Paul. Like you just
Do we
family.
do we ever give the backstory of Paul? I don't think we've given it on the pod.
We have not. That is. They probably like, why are you calling him Paul?
So do I feel like you have to share it. Like you have to say it.
So, okay, long story short, we all, what was it, KCGP we went? Is that why we
Yes.
were all? Okay, so we
Yeah.
were all in Kansas City for KCGP. What a good ghetto time that was. But Jeff was with us, another one of our brothers. Shout out to my Neo.
Same.
And we went to go and visit his mother. And when we all walked in, I think that might have been the first time we all met her in person.
Mhm.
He introduced us to her by name, and Jeff said, like, "Oh my, this is Qualls," and she said, "Oh, hi, Paul, nice to meet you." He said, "No, Qualls." That's what I said. It's like, so ever since then, you have been Paul because you have been misnamed by Jeff's mother, and it's been the greatest thing in the world. And you are in my phone now to this day, as Paul. So you talked about patience earlier. That is something that I don't see for myself that other people see in me. So I'm curious. I can unpack that later, but like, what do people see in you that you don't always see in yourself?
It's kind of hard to put a word to it because the best way I can describe it is I think that I have a pretty decent work ethic. Like I feel like I'm a hard worker, right? But I think that when I hear other people talk about not not everything that I do, but when I see other people kind of give their perspective or share how they either admire or are surprised or respect either how much that I do or how I do what I do. Um More so specifically as it relates to qualify, but even in some things that just pertain to life in general.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes because I get so lost in this feeling of like that's just what needs to be done that I don't necessarily see it as I don't look at it as work ethic. I just look at it as well, it got to be done. Who else will do it if I don't? Especially given that like it's a brand with my name on it, that I started. I hope there's an answer in there somewhere.
No, it is. And that actually supports. Bruss was talking, and your name came up the other day, and you were described as a machine as it
Gee.
relates as it relates to qualified. It's like you pushing out so much content, you're doing so many different things consistently, and you've just really been on your grind. Like for a few years now, in particular, like with this. So you would describe it as a machine, and I think machines have work ethic, and that's not something that you would probably um, see or say for yourself, as you've already mentioned. But the one thing I have learned is if you do something well and you think it's just because it's the norm and that's just all you know, like own it. You do it well. That doesn't mean everybody else does. Like obviously sprinkle some humility in there. Don't go around and just get big headed. Now you just got a hot air balloon.
Shit.
Just tip over. But yeah, like I overlook myself all the time. So in terms of this question, literally anything. If anybody has anything to say about me that's positive, I'm generally shocked because I know that I'm super invested in other people. I know I'm super invested in seeing potential. Like I can do those like X-ray scans and be like, up, they're loading. Like I
That's funny, but I get it though. That makes a lot
right.
of sense. That's a great analogy.
That's very much me. So I don't, and I also don't expect myself out of other people. So I
Mm.
don't expect other people to do that. So when people see things in me that I think I'm just doing because I'm supposed to, or that's what it is, I'm like, oh damn, okay, maybe I am as dope as they say. But it particularly patience. Like I don't think that I have patience whatsoever. I internally I'm a
Ironic.
very decent person. There's a time clock ticking, and I'm just ready to be like, oh, like to everything. But everybody says that I'm patient. I don't see that. I think my patience displays through my tact because I know my tongue is sharp. And if y'all let me speak freely like I wanted to, I probably wouldn't have no friends. You know, I probably wouldn't have a whole lot of people around me just because I just be like, respectfully, like everybody else is just dumb. Like, well, just get your act together. So yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting because but I think you made it make more sense as to why you wouldn't necessarily see it as patients the same way others do. Because I would definitely say that I would attribute a lot of your patience to the education background, just you having to deal with classes that it just naturally had to be implemented in some capacity. But I do think that the tact is a part of it because it also applied in the education space. I think that there are a lot of people, well, maybe it's not patience, maybe it's discernment. Maybe that's a better word that might fit at least what you described in the tact aspect. But yeah, so when you initially said the patience thing, I was like, that's crazy that you don't see yourself as patient because I it makes sense that a lot of people would, but I think between patience and discernment, yeah, it's definitely there. Definitely a character trait for you, bro.
Let me put a little ribbon on my forehead and gift myself to somebody. Hell.
The thing is, you'd actually do some shit like that.
Oh,
I don't know who
absolutely.
I don't know who for. I don't know who for, but you would actually
Here we go. I got one right here, ready to go.
I could just see I could see you
Absolutely.
walking in somebody else with this ribbon on your head talking about your gift is here.
Yes. My love language is to annoy the hell out of you. So yeah, absolutely.
I believe that. I believe that. Man, no, that's some great stuff. That's some really good stuff. I think, yeah, I think that definitely speaks to our time. Yeah, what, 8, at least 8, but 9 years just about. Because you came back in 15.
15.
Yeah. I don't think I maybe met you till 16 though.
Okay.
But yeah. Yeah, 8. Still going on a decade, man. It's crazy. It's
Yes.
crazy work. Crazy work. But yeah, no, this has been another check-in with the guys. I am Mr. Qualified. That is
Uncle Don Don.
everybody's favorite uncle. And until next week, until next time, we'll catch y'all on the next episode and the next check-in. Peace.